Good morning, CFL fans. We are back for another episode of CFL Summer Showcase Northern Lights, and we've got some great topics to discuss today, including Toronto re-signing Shane Richards, Zach Collaros hurt again, Kadeem Carey injury, as well as Michael's got quite the hot take that we'll discuss today that involves firing the entire Edmonton coaching staff. So with all that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and play our intro. We'll jump right into it. Hopefully you guys enjoy the episode. All right, Michael, how you doing this morning, man?
Ready to talk a little 12-man football here as the NFL season's actually starting right around the corner. I mean, literally July 31st. So, I mean, we're going to get double dipping here between the NFL and CFL. So, I mean, I'm excited about that. But, yeah, I'm excited to talk about some 12-man football for sure.
Yes, sir. Looking forward to the NFL coming back, of course, but definitely you always know that the NFL is going to, the NFL season's creeping up on us when you start getting those posts. I wish football would come back. And then, you get all the alternative fans like, football's been here the whole time. What are you doing? But it's been real common recently. So must be NFL season. Man, there's so many things to talk about because we didn't do an episode last week. Some of the topics carried over, not many of them, but I wanted to kind of get your thoughts. I mean, like, where do you want to start? Technically, I've got Toronto re-signing Shane Richards at the top of the list here, but that's just chronologically. So, I mean, we could start there, or we could talk about, some of the things with Edmonton.
Yeah, I want to start with Edmonton, actually. This team frustrates the hell out of me. Like, it's frustrated me since Chris Jones was there 4 years ago, and it's frustrated me even further because while I have soured a little bit on the Trey Ford situation, because obviously Trey Ford has been the victim of the one thing that I complain about a lot with the NFL, but it's the Justin Fields factor. Right? I don't necessarily blame Trey Ford for his lack of development and his lack of overall ability to reach his potential. I don't fully blame him. I have to give him some blame because it is up to the player as well. However, if you take a look at the instability of this franchise for the last 4 years, basically, since we've really started covering it hardcore here on Shady Sports. I mean, I've only been with the company for 3 years now, or collaborating with you guys for 3 years now. So it's you look at just from that 3-year window, the offensive coordinator changes, the head coaching changes, the lack of overall development from a coaching perspective with this team. I mean, they bring in MBT last year, and MBT looks like a shell of his former self. Like, granted, he's a little bit older, but they expected that veteran presence to be the thing. Trey Ford ends up taking over later on in the year and uses his athleticism. And then for whatever reason, they turn around and take Trey Ford, and then they try to box him in again this year. And it's like, you got to let Trey Ford be Trey Ford, because he is an athletic quarterback who can make plays when it matters the most. But you also need to develop him as a quarterback. And Edmonton has failed him on both fronts. I know that seems weird to say, let him be him, but then box him in. But you have to be able, as a coach, to be able to, like, okay, these are your strengths, but let's work on your weaknesses. Let's make your weaknesses better. Let's teach you how to learn how to read coverages. Now, that's completely up to the player also, how much work they want to put in individually as well. And from the reports that we have heard, or from some of the sources that we have heard, that Trey is not doing that. So that's on Trey, right? But you take a look at Edmonton, it doesn't matter who's under the helm. This team can't win. Whether it's defense, whether it's offense, whether it's stupid penalties, whether it's the offensive line looking like it's got more holes than Swiss cheese. Like, it's the entire situation that's happening in Edmonton right now. It does not matter who the quarterback is, because they're likely going to fail. And it's because of, and when that happens, and you start looking at that from a 4-year window and a 4-year stretch, it's the top. It has to come from the top. It has to come from somewhere in that organization's management team. And it reminds me a lot of the Washington Commanders franchise under Daniel Snyder. It reminds me of the Dallas Cowboys with Jerry Jones right now. The ownership group's getting in the way, and it's causing these teams to not reach what they potentially could. Because if you took Edmonton and you just listed the players and didn't put Edmonton across the top, but just listed the players, and you took some of the other rosters that are in the CFL and put them up, you'd go, Edmonton's roster looks really, really good on paper. And the results are not coming out. So why is that? And it was Chris Jones when Chris Jones was there, in my opinion. And now I'm beginning to think it's the organization. But they have failed Trey Ford, and Trey Ford has failed himself. Like, I don't want to feel like I'm putting all the blame on Edmonton, but Trey Ford has blamed him, has failed himself, because he himself hasn't put the work in to overcome those adversities that he's facing. So it's a little bit different of a situation than Justin Fields per se, because Justin Fields probably, from all accounts, put in that work. It's just that he was really limited by the organization in Chicago and never given a fair chance. Edmonton's given it a fair chance, and Trey Ford has not seized that opportunity. It's just they haven't done it the correct way to give him that opportunity. So there's a little bit of a 50-50 there. I'm tired of this Trey Ford versus Edmonton back and forth that I see all over the place in social media, because it's like both organization and player are to blame in this situation. And unfortunately, because of that, I don't think Trey Ford will ever be the face of the CFL.
Definitely not in Edmonton.
I don't think he's the CFL as a whole.
It's very possible. You might be right. I mean, we're in season, it's his 5th year, I believe, at this point. Yeah. So, I mean, he's a guy that you still don't know what you have. I mean, I guess you do to an extent. You understand that he's limited as a passer. You're going to have to scheme some things up for him. So, I mean, there are some questions that have been answered, but he's never really gotten a chance to play a full season. And after they pulled him out recently, let me back up a little bit. So coming out of 2024, I felt much like you felt. Chris Jones is the issue. He's not giving Trey Ford a legitimate chance. Why isn't he giving him a chance? He's an incredible athlete. He's a once-in-a-lifetime athlete. Then we get to the 2025 season. They sign him to a big money extension right away, which is always a little concerning, of course. But then, he starts and he just doesn't look that great. And my opinion kind of started to slide. Maybe all these things we've been hearing and talking about Trey Ford are accurate. Maybe he's not putting in the work off the field. Maybe he's not able to read defenses like we heard. Maybe there are some issues there and that are of his doing, and it's not entirely the organization. And like you, I think I'm at this point where I understand that there's some fault on both sides. Now, you can sit here and debate how much, who's more at fault here. But I mean, I think when I really look at it, I don't know that there's a world where there's not a 50-50 split there on blame. Because, Trey Ford obviously could have done a better job of mentally preparing himself for the opportunity to be a starter. And maybe that's a big reason why Chris Jones couldn't go to him, And then on the flip side, I think Edmonton definitely should have recognized, hey, this situation's not going the right direction. We don't see enough progression in Trey Ford. What can we do to assist him? Do we get him a quarterback coach for the offseason? Or, how do we go about fixing this situation? And it just seems like there was a lack of effort, perhaps on both parts. So as far as that goes, I could see Trey Ford ending up in another city and maybe rekindling his career. I mean, he's still fairly young. I want to say he's only 26. So at that point, does he end up with like for instance, does he end up with like a Hamilton, who doesn't really have a long-term answer quarterback behind Bo Levi Mitchell, or maybe Saskatchewan, where Trevor Harris is the guy there, but at the same time, they don't really have like a long-term answer either. It will be intriguing to see what happens with him over the next season, because I think after this year, I don't know that Edmonton can bring him back, especially at the cap number he's got right now.
Well, so here's my thing with this, and this comes from more of talking about Trey Ford himself than it does necessarily an organization that he may end up with. If he goes to Winnipeg, or if he goes to Hamilton, or if he goes to Saskatchewan and gets an opportunity and chance, is he going to put in the work that is necessary in order for him to become the franchise, the face of the franchise? Like that's my concern, and it's primarily because of the fact that Edmonton has been patient with him, gave him an extension when, let's be honest, I'll be completely honest with you, I'm not sure he did anything to deserve the extension. Right? Like, to be fair, like, what has he done other than close out a fairly good year last year, close out playing fairly well last year, that deserved an extension of that magnitude, right? Like that like, he hasn't done much prior to that. So how much of it's going to be the work that he puts in? And is he going to get to Edmonton or get to Hamilton and all of a sudden be like, well, I'm the incumbent, so I guess I don't really have to work as hard? Because it's almost what it feels like he's been doing even as a backup in Edmonton. Oh, I'm the backup, I don't have to work as hard. You know what I mean? Like, so that's going to have to come from a internal spot with Trey more than anything else. Now, I don't want to obviously a chunk of this is just based upon some reports that we've heard. I don't want to speculate too much, because Trey may be doing all that and it's just appearing differently to other people. But the results aren't showing on the field from a perspective that makes me think, from a fan of this league, that he's been doing all those things. And that's the reason why Edmonton hasn't really turned to him. And when they finally do, they're still losing games. I mean, it could be more than that. Obviously, I think, from the top down is still very much likely. It's from a management perspective, but this Edmonton team, if you're a fan of Edmonton, I'm sorry, because right now you guys are, it's been a rough few years for sure.
Completely agree. I think the biggest takeaway from here is that, like I said, like I mentioned before, Trey Ford's very young. Yes, he's been in the league for 4 seasons. He's going to be heading into season 5 in 2026. But at the end of the day, currently, he's got about a full season's worth of statistics.
Right.
Through 48 some games. So, he's only thrown for a little over 4,000 yards. But when you look at the bigger picture of what he's put on paper in terms of his, statistical numbers and everything, it doesn't really look that bad. And that's kind of the funny part, that, like, you look at some of these games that he's had as of recently. We just had that game against BC where he completed a third of his passes, didn't throw a touchdown, and had an interception. Games like that, he just comes out, has a terrible, terrible game every once in a while, and stuff like that. You have to wonder about. Is that a blip on the radar, or is that just who he is? Are you going to have to live with games like that throughout his career, if you are going to have him as the starter? So, it's one of those situations where I definitely think he needs a new start. So, where he ends up, I'm not sure, but if I were him, I would have Toronto pretty high on my list of places I want to land. go sit, hopefully behind Chad Kelly, assuming he comes back, which that's another subject we'll get to in a little bit here. Don't worry. So, assuming Chad Kelly comes back and he's the starter in 2026, I obviously don't want to have Trey Ford sit his entire career, but at the same time, have him sit for a season, maybe two. By that point, I think Chad Kelly would be like 32, 33 years old. So he's near in the back nine of his career. And then maybe, you just roll with Ford, once Kelly's contract is up. But I think Ryan Dinwiddie would do wonders for his development as a quarterback and eventually help him get to the point where he's a quality starter. Maybe not the face of the league, like you mentioned, but somebody who could be counted on at least.
I mean, he is young enough, and finding the right coaching staff may help that for sure. It's just, it almost feels like it's going to be another project of sorts, where they're going to have to let him sit and hopefully he progresses into what they think he can be. And I guess it will just have to be the right situation that will make that work for him. So
I agree. At the end of the day, we're still talking about a quarterback who has averaged over 9 yards per rushing attempt. So as much as I hate to say it, there's going to be a place for Trey Ford on a roster. We can debate where he belongs on the depth chart, but he's going to be in the CFL for a very long time still. So
he's dynamic as a player. I mean, it reminds me a lot of Tim Tebow. I think Trey Ford has a little bit better arm talent than Tim Tebow does, but they're both dynamic football players with the ball in their hand, and they both can make plays when needed. It's just everything else that makes up their profile just isn't as promising, and that's why I worry a little bit about Trey long term, mainly being the face of the league. But I mean, if he's not the face of the league, then hopefully he can be the face of a franchise somewhere. I'm still rooting for him. I hope that he is able to get there.
Absolutely. I mean, we had him on before he was selected by Edmonton. Seems like a really good guy. Good person. We can sit here and debate whether he's doing the right things off the or on the field all day long, but it seems like he's certainly the type of guy you want in a locker room. You're not going to root against that guy because he's not, not somebody you can tolerate or anything like that. So as far as that goes, I think he's always going to have someone in his corner. Now to kind of move on to the other flip side of this decision, obviously, as we know, this past week they decided to start Cody Vichardo, but still lost the game. So, I mean, obviously the big question then becomes, was this the right decision by Edmonton, or are their problems deeper than the quarterback position?
Oh, it's much deeper than the quarterback position. I mean, like I said when I started out, it doesn't really matter who the quarterback is for Edmonton right now. There's a lot going on there. I understand making the move to Cody, but if you take a look at Cody's career at the CFL level, it's not really. I want to say it's not really like a pillar of top excellent quarterback play. I like Cody. I think Cody's is a good quarterback. I think he's good for the CFL. It's just I almost wonder if he's a little bit inflated because of the Grey Cup, but I'm not sure. I get why you make the switch because you need to try to make something happen because obviously the season's getting away from you, and whatnot. But you signed Trey to an extension at the beginning of the year. I think you should probably just stick with Trey, go through the ups and downs, let him get the experience and see if he can learn on the fly. You're going to lose some games. Clearly, Edmonton has other issues that's not just quarterback centric. It looks like the defense is still having issues, and that might be because they're on the field for so long. Again, a lot of it's speculation. You can't really know what's going on unless you're there inside the organization. But just from a fan perspective, it just feels like Edmonton is just not cohesive. And I don't know if that's coming from the coaching staff. I don't know if that's coming from, I personally think it's probably coming from management, but I don't think it matters who the quarterback is. And benching Ford for Fajardo was probably the right decision to make in the time, but you still lost the game, so maybe you just go back to Ford and just let it roll out the season now. what else in the comments, if you're listening or anything, what else, or stands back now, but Sam, what else do you think you could do from a perspective of Edmonton? Like, what do you think could work for them in their sense? Because I feel like that it's just more of a disarray from a management perspective more than anything. But do you think it's like a one player thing, or
one player thing? Definitely not. I think there's like you said, there's much deeper issues with Edmonton. I think it's a culture problem there. And maybe Mark Killam is the right guy, but currently we just haven't seen the results on the field as of yet. We definitely haven't seen the discipline issues that we've seen in BC either. So,
right?
I want to say that he's definitely doing something right. And he's obviously very well respected for a reason. But, you had actually said recently that maybe they need to fire the whole staff. Have you come off of that at all? Or are you thinking that that's the solution?
Well, I mean, it's unfair to Kellerman. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, he's what he just got there,
Yeah.
this year. So I mean, it's a little unfair to him. It's more, I think, more of a management thing than it is necessarily me saying the whole staff per se. I think it's from a standpoint of they need to look at the internal workings of the entire organization, and because I feel like there's some bad apples in there somewhere. Like there's somebody that's making bad decisions that has power, and people are just kind of going like, yes, okay, let's do this. And if it's coming from the very top, then unfortunately there's nothing you can do because that's just coming from the top at that point, right?
Yeah.
Like, but if it's coming from like a team manager or a team president that just has too much power, like they really need to kind of dive into that from a standpoint, because and this could also be a situation where Edmonton's kind of playing that Washington thing, like Josh Harris bought the Commanders. He didn't change anything the first year. He rolled out with what he had just to see what he had, and then they made all kinds of changes and went from a 4-12 record to an NFC Championship game. So maybe they're giving Kellerman a year to just kind of be like, this is what we have, work with what you can, and then we'll rally around you next year. It is possible. I mean, it's very much a good strategy to have, because you at least are able to take the top of what you do currently have at your disposal, and you can add pieces from there. But I don't know. It's hard to say that because Edmonton's been so crap the last 4 years that it's hard to really gauge. I mean, they went 0-10 2 years ago to start off the year, 0-11. And then they got their win on like a rouge or something. It was like something crazy. So, yeah, the team has definitely been struggling for multiple years now. So maybe that's what they decided to do with Kellerman. Maybe that's why Kellerman took the job, was because he got that wish. Kill him. Sorry, I keep saying Kellerman. I know.
You're good.
But maybe that's the reason why he took the job, and maybe that's the reason why he's going to roll it out and be there because he was promised 2 years, but we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting, but I mean, obviously that's why you give a guy like him 2 years. I mean, obviously he's a first-time coach, but at the same time, there's so much to rebuild on this team, starting from the very bottom and kind of working your way up, that it's going to take a while, to be fair. So I think there's some of that going on for sure. I don't think that they were necessarily going to be competitive right away, and maybe some of the outside expectations are kind of creeping their way in at this point. But I do think there's still some issues that need to be corrected. I do think that they've come a long way, and they've made a lot of moves in the front office in particular. The past season, I mean, it's basically all new staff for the most part. So I mean, maybe we see a better year too, and they go from there. But it's tough for me to sit here and say like they need to move on from anyone on staff currently, because they're all fairly fresh. So it's just one of those situations where like I personally cannot really put my finger on what the issue is with Edmonton. Like you said, their roster is incredibly talented. At this point they've got a coaching staff that a lot of people respect, and realistically, before Chris Jones, I mean, is highly respected in the CFL. There's a reason why he ended up on a staff after he was fired mid-season. So
yeah,
it's just crazy to me. Like you said, there's got to be something in the process is not right, but what exactly it is so hard for me to try and determine, because to me they've they've got everything in place to be successful. It's just not quite coming together yet. But
it's also possible that Chris Jones is just better of a support coach than he is a head coach. I mean, him as a GM, he made some flashy moves that just didn't work out. So it may not have even all been Chris Jones's fault. And in the overturn in the organization, as far as the organization from this past year, they could have been given the same thing, that, you know, the same approach. You know, like, you got a year. Let's see what we have. Let's make moves behind the year, and let's prepare for 2026. Maybe they knew 2025 was going to be a wash. Maybe that's why, you know, they didn't make a ton of, because they really didn't have a huge offseason. You know, they brought in Fajardo, but they didn't really do much else. I mean, Eugene Lewis left, and I can't really remember any other big free agent signing that they made. So it's possible that they're just looking at it from a standpoint of let's punt on 2025, or let's let 2025 play out how it is, and you know, we'll roll out what we can and make some big moves in 2026. There is one thing I will say about Edmonton, though, is I do fully expect that this team will be very active this offseason. I think that they'll probably be one of the most active when it comes to getting players that fit the system that they want, or the culture change that they want to instill, because they need to do something. And I think that Matt Keelam knows that, and that's where it's going to be, and that's where it's going to come from, is going to come from him. I think he needs to put demands on the front office and say, hey, I want these guys for culture reasons. I think that's going to be the only thing that's going to make it right in Edmonton. So maybe even it's a 3-year plan for them. Who knows? I think Sam is attending to family right now for an instance, so I guess I'll try to fill some time if I can in this situation. Actually, it'll be a good time to take a quick break. Let's do that. Let's take a quick break.
I'm just being myself, cool as can be. When I'm being myself, you wish you were me. It's so easy. Get out your own way. It's just so easy.
Welcome back. Sam's back with us now here at Summer Showcase Northern Lights, talking a little CFL. We were just talking a little bit about Edmonton before that short little break. Sam, welcome back, my man.
Sorry about that.
Nope.
Had to
You're
step
good.
away.
I just didn't want to fill the time with you know, ranting and ravings, and I didn't want to have a ton of dead air either. So I figured a commercial break would be good right there.
No, that was perfect. And actually, we can kind of stay on the subject of Edmonton, although shift gears slightly, and talk about this. The Edmonton Elks, or I guess the city of Edmonton, was awarded the CFL Combine for next season. I thought that was kind of a cool thing. I like how they move it around each season. I think it's a little bit of a saying it's a tourist attraction is a bit much, but it's a point of attraction for some fans. So like, I definitely think it's a good thing to hear when your city gets it. Not a ton to really unpack here on this. I mean, it is what it is type situation, but something that I wanted to touch on today nonetheless. So congratulations to the city of Edmonton for being awarded the rights to the 2026 CFL Combine. And then shifting gears, let's talk about Kadeem Carey's injury.
Oh boy.
Given that they just played Saskatchewan and it happened against Edmonton, I mean, it felt like a good transition point. But Kadeem Carey is obviously a veteran. You know, he's been around for a few years. I have to ask the question, and I feel bad even having to ask the question because he seems like the type of guy you really want to root for as well. But is this the end for him? I mean, he's 32 years old. He just suffered a season-ending injury. He was kicking around in free agency really late this season. What do you see for Kadeem Carey coming down the pike?
I can't begin to even. I can't even begin to imagine what it's been like for him, because he went from being literally one of the hottest running backs in the CFL to being a free agent to kicking around for a little bit before finally signing with a team. Then he gets to see the field, then he gets hurt. I mean, 32 is old for a running back, but Andrew Harris is what? 36? I mean, Harris is up there in pretty good age and still kicking around. It feels like the CFL doesn't really have as big of a fall off, because the run game isn't really as prominently heavily as featured. But I don't know. It's going to be hard for him to come back from this at 32. I mean, he's been around for a little bit now, and injury this late in your career, it's pretty brutal to see. I feel bad for him. I love Carey as a player. I thought he had all the potential in the world at the NFL level. So I hope he's able to come back, maybe put together a couple years of just solid role playing. But I don't think he'll ever reach the heights that we saw with him previously.
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate reality of his situation now. The coaching staff already came out and said it would be tough for him to finish out the season or play again this season. So he was placed on the 6-game injury list immediately. It's just one of those situations where I probably, this is probably a little bit of a strong term, but I mean, it's one of those things where I think the collective CFL fandom, their heart kind of broke for Carey. He gets a situation where he ends up with the team that he wanted to play with, supposedly. He finally gets on the field, and then he gets injured substantially to the point where he's not going to be able to play against the rest of the season, if not longer. So it's definitely one of those things where you never want to see it. But it's the unfortunate reality of playing football. Sometimes there's going to be injuries, and sometimes there's going to be potentially career-ending injuries. It just depends on where the player's at in their career. I will say that they did sign a very intriguing running back that looks like he could be something of a Kadeem Carey clone, Mario Anderson Jr. He played with Memphis, had a really big season in 2024, and could potentially be a pretty interesting piece of that offense. So, I mean, he's definitely an interesting guy that could add some immediate value to them. But regardless of how this happened, Saskatchewan has had a troubling run recently of running back injuries, right? So you kind of have to wonder if there's not something that needs to be addressed there. Whether it's the training room or the way they approach their run game, or I'm not really sure what the answer is there, but it definitely seems like there should be something that needs to be fixed.
Oh, this is tough for Carey, though, because I mean, that injury could have happened to anybody. I mean, it was such a gruesome and unique situation. It was just the perfect storm for that to happen, unfortunately. And I don't know if maybe that's a testament to the weight room or not. I'm not really sure. I don't know if there's anything that he really could have done in that case. But yeah, they do have a very interesting history with running back injuries for sure. So it might just be the way that they use them. They're a little more of a power game at the CFL level than other teams, so it's very possible that that's just maybe what they do, and it just may be unfortunate that they have it happen more often than not.
No,
it's hard
that's
to tell.
completely fair. And that could be literally the entire issue. But I mean, literally, Thomas Bertrand Houdon has been hurt. AJ Ouellette has missed some time. Now Kadeem Carey's hurt, and he was like the guy who brought in to make them, or to help them weather the storm through those other injuries. But it's been interesting to follow along with Saskatchewan. They still keep trucking though, so I believe they're 6-1 now. It definitely seems like this season has been highly competitive across the board. So it's been really fun to watch so far. You kind of never really know who's going to win each game, so it'd be interesting to see how things progress the rest of the way. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
So moving on to the next subject at hand. Zach Collaros left the game last week. Honestly, it was one of those situations where I felt like it was reasonable to talk about. Chris Streveler came in and played fairly well. Do you think we're getting to a point in Winnipeg where they start making long-term plans to move away from Collaros? Seems like he's getting banged up a lot more often. He's obviously in, his late 30s at this point. It just seems like, it could potentially be nearing the time where they need to make a serious plan for the future.
No, they have to. I mean, he did not play very well last night against Toronto. Toronto kind of Toronto has Winnipeg's number anyways. We discussed it a little bit off air before. It feels like Toronto just seems to be Winnipeg's kryptonite lately, the last few years or so. Toronto, by the way, a little tidbit here for you. Toronto did avoid their tying their worst start in franchise history. I think the last time was like 2019. They were like 1-6, I think, was in 2019. So they did avoid it last night with last night's victory, as far as their worst start since 2019, I should say. Maybe not franchise history, but either way, I thought it was a cool little tidbit. I don't know. It's hard to gauge. I mean, Collaros is still playing at such a high level for the most part. I mean, I know that he left the game and got hurt, and then, last night didn't look very promising, but overall, he still had a really good year for Winnipeg. So it's hard to be like, yeah, you should move on. But when you start getting into that late 30s at any position, I know that we saw Brady play, and Aaron Rodgers still thinks he can play or whatever at 40, but, you kind of have to start making those plans, right? There's a lot of hitting going on. You've been playing for a long time, so your body doesn't hold up as well. So like Collaros has been dealing with a lot of these smaller injuries and whatnot over the course of the last few years. So yeah, I think they should. I just don't know if Streveler's it. This is the one thing about the CFL that if you can find a young guy that can stick around for a little bit, that's perfect to have. You may not see the field for a while, but when he finally does, maybe it's a Davis Alexander type situation, So, yeah, I think they should definitely start making long-term plans, though, for sure, because they're going to need to. I think a lot of these teams are going to need to. It's a pretty average collective, pretty high age average collective for the league, I feel like, for starting quarterbacks.
You're not wrong. You look at Bo Levi Mitchell, currently McLeod, Bethel Thompson, Zach Collaros, Trevor Harris. I mean, all these guys are in their mid to late 30s. The thing with Winnipeg that concerns me, and maybe it's just because I'm not super high on Terry Wilson, but they don't really have. I mean, they've got Chase Artopius. Hopefully, I pronounced that last name correct.
Artopus or Poos? Is it P-E-U-S at the end?
P-O-E.
P-O-U. Yeah, he played at Chattanooga.
Yes.
Yeah, he played at Chattanooga. He was kind of a dual threat guy over there at Chattanooga. He kind of did a little bit of both. He was a runner and a passer for the most part. Led them to a pretty good record too, if I remember correctly. He's got a little bit of talent. He might be a perfect fit for there, but he's a rookie, I believe. I think he was in school last year. So I mean, he's a young guy. It just depends on whether or not they stick around with him.
Yeah, exactly. And you were right. He was with Tennessee Chattanooga the last 2 years, UCLA before that. Had a fairly good college career. I just, it's one of those situations in the CFL where he's only been there for a season, right? And it seems like they always want to have 2-3 years behind these quarterbacks before they get inserted as starters. So I think that would be my one concern. Can Collaros or Streveler get them through the next season or two, or does Terry Wilson step up, who's been there since I think 2023, if I remember correctly. He's been there for a while, and it seems like they like him. He's a little bit of a dual threat as well. Spent some time in the USFL with the Houston Gamblers, so he could be a quality quarterback as well. For some odd reason, I'm just not sold on Wilson in general. Wasn't
he with the Maulers too, Pittsburgh?
He might have been.
Yeah, I think he was.
I don't recall.
I think it was before because he was with Houston.
You might be thinking of Troy Williams.
could be. I thought Wilson was there too for some reason. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I think it was just the Gamblers. That's all that's listed on his CFL profile, but I'd be lying if I followed his career very closely.
Yeah, no.
But I mean, after this game, I mean, as far as the overall situation, I mean, you come out of this game, Chris Strevler had a much better game than Caleros. 11 of 18, 148 yards, a touchdown, 0 interceptions. You know, he's obviously a lot more dangerous in the run game than Caleros. Man, I mean, I don't think Strevler's your long-term answer, but he might be your short-term answer if Caleros keeps playing, you know, like he has the last couple weeks.
Yeah, and the other thing about Wilson too is, though, going back to that real quick. I mean, Strevler will definitely be your short term because he played really well in the absence of Caleros in week 1, or right, it was week 1 that Caleros wasn't there. So I mean, Strevler really proved me wrong when I was talking about how I didn't think that he was going to be able to do it from a passing standpoint. So maybe Strevler is the answer, you know. But what's Strevler's age? Isn't he up there a little bit too?
I think he's 31.
31, yeah. Because Terry Wilson's 27. So I mean, I guess if you're gonna, you know, have him kind of come in and be the future of that, then that would be like the idea or spot to do it. You know what I mean? Like that would be the right age, I guess, at the CFL level because they seem to hit their prime in the late 20s, early 30s. You know, so
True.
Maybe Wilson is that next guy because he's been there for a little bit. Who knows? But yeah, I don't know. Maybe you do turn to Strevler in the short term. But, I mean, there's also a chance that Caleros ends up the season strong and wins the MOP. And, you know, this is a mute conversation and it doesn't really it doesn't mean anything because, you know, Winnipeg brings them back again next year. But I think they need to start making plans. I think all these teams would be really good to make plans for the future like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And maybe it turns out that, you know, Chase Octopus on the bench there is
Octopus. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. That's what we're gonna go with now.
Just kidding.
Octopus.
You know, maybe he's the guy long term, but it's been intriguing to follow them this year because Winnipeg, it's always one of those teams that, you know, they can win any given game. They're always talented. They're always going to be in the playoff mix. But the last 2 weeks, you know, they've lost some pretty big matchups that were fairly important in the playoff picture. You know, I mean, they lose to Calgary by 21 points. Then they lose to Toronto by 14 points. A couple weeks before that, they lost to Calgary by 21 points. You know, then you look at Caleros and he's got 8 interceptions on the season and only 7 touchdowns. Again, you know, he's getting up there in age. It's definitely one of those things that I feel like it needs to be discussed. It might be time to really start considering what the future looks like without him. You know, maybe you don't necessarily have to get rid of him. You know, maybe it's just a situation where he takes that mentor role for a year or two and he's just like your quarterback 2 or quarterback 3 or something of that sort. But, you know, obviously that's always a tough situation for a guy like Caleros who's really been a legend for Winnipeg. But I think it's probably time for him to start considering what's after football as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think so as well. So, Trevor Harris too.
Trevor Harris as well, but we got less of a case to tell him he should be retiring tomorrow.
Yes, yes. Less of a case for sure, but Trevor Harris needs to start thinking about it too. So
yeah, he's got Saskatchewan rolling pretty good. He might have like a lifetime contract there.
If they win the Grey Cup this year, he definitely will.
Yeah, exactly. And I wouldn't put it past that team. They look tough this year, so I'm hoping they can continue this. But Shane Richards is back. You know, he returned to Toronto after a season away. Played with Edmonton last season. I believe he had either announced he was going to retire or he had hinted towards retirement and then ended up re-signing with Toronto mid-season. So I think that's kind of a big move for Toronto. They needed help up front. You know, they've had a hard time protecting Arbuckle a lot of the season. So it's definitely a situation where he should be a much needed addition. He did actually play this last game with Toronto. So any thoughts on that, or do you just want to go ahead and move on?
I think it's just a great addition for a team that was clearly struggling. I mean, they get the win now, and the season's still not anywhere close to being over. So there's a chance they could turn this around and get into a playoff spot. And they would be the most dangerous team. They would be a very dangerous, like, bottom seed team if they were able to get in, because Chad Kelly should be coming back. I mean, we hope. So.
Agreed. And speaking of Chad Kelly, that was one of the subjects for today as well. He was literally placed on the six-game injury list yesterday. We are through week 8. He has not appeared in a game this season. He was placed on the 6-game injury list yesterday. I've been mentioning this various times throughout this season so far. I think Toronto botched this situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think he should have been on the 6-game injury list to begin with. He realistically was taking up a roster spot for God knows what reason. I mean, I don't know if they thought that he was going to be coming back and then he suffered some sort of setback. But the dude broke his leg, and it was very late in the season. Like, I think the rest of the football world kind of had an idea that he might not be able to play, at least not early in the season. So I guess I don't know why you would leave the door open that early in the year, at least. I mean, it just made the most sense to me. Place him on the 6-game injury list to start the season. Then you reevaluate where he's at after that. If you want to place him on 1-game injury list from there and just, limp him along the rest of the way to see if he can play this season, that makes sense. But doing it vice versa did not make a lot of sense to me. So I'm curious why they chose to do that. Is there any reason you can think of why they would have waited?
No. I mean, this feels like it might have been it feels like a situation that is possible a setback, because that's almost what this would feel like from a timeline perspective. But it makes zero sense otherwise, because let's face it, you mentioned in the preseason show or a draft special or whatever it was that you would have been, you mentioned that there was a possibility that he may not play at all this season. Like, you had said that, and I remember it sticking out to me because I was like, nah, it's like he should be back, no problem. But now you're starting to wonder, maybe there was a setback involved, maybe it was worse than they expected it to be. Who the hell knows, right? Like, I mean, at this point in time, you're starting to wonder, right? Is he going to be back? Are they trying to, hopefully save him so he's 1,000% in the playoffs? Or it really honestly feels weird. But the timeline suggests a setback. Otherwise, it's just a complete mishandling of the situation by Toronto. And until we hear that he had a setback, it's just a mishandling. It has to be. Like, there's no other information given out to it. So,
yeah, I agree. I will say that the timing of it now is not terrible. Basically, Toronto has a 5-game stretch of Winnipeg, Ottawa at home. Then they have Edmonton on the road. They play BC at home, and then Toronto on the road. And then they finally have another bye week in week 14, which would be his 6th week on the list. So maybe that's part of the thought process. I know you can technically remove him from the 6-game injury list early, but I believe it has to be after 4 games, if I remember correctly, just based on salary constraints. So as far as that goes, I mean, I still really have to question why they went the direction they did. Toronto has forgotten that staff has forgotten more about football than I've ever learned. So yes. I have to believe there's some sort of reason there, but realistically, it seems puzzling to me, especially now in hindsight. And obviously hindsight's 2020, but you just finished week 8. The guy hasn't played in a game. You've already had 1 bye week. We heard that there might be, he might come back around the bye week, and then it just never happened. And now he's placed on the 6th game. So speaking of quarterback injuries, we literally probably could have talked quarterback injuries throughout this entire show today. Drew Brown also got banged up after this past game. And he is also 0-4 as a starter with Ottawa so far this year. He got blasted on what was a pretty controversial hit by Deshaun Amos, who to his credit, came out and apologized on Twitter, which I will pull that up here shortly. And him and Drew Brown had a very professional back and forth on Twitter, which I really like to see as far as that goes. But
he was fined, right?
I think he was
suspended, or was he just fined?
I think he was just fined. I don't think he was suspended. I think at the time the league office had and the officials on the field had determined that it was not egregious, so they didn't even remove him from the field to play after the hit.
Okay.
And I don't believe he's been suspended.
I did see he had some sort of punishment. I just couldn't remember what it was, if it was a 1-game suspension or if it was a fine. But I do know that he got something. I mean, he definitely got fined, at least, for the hit. Man, Drew Brown is an interesting situation, right? Well, first, this is the Deshaun Amos situation here where, Amos came out and apologized. And Drew Brown was the first comment underneath where he said, appreciate it better, appreciate it, brother, and matter. The people that matter, you're not the type of player. It's football. Shit happens fast. Which, if you look at the rest of the comments here, and we're not going to air them because they don't need to be, shown because they're, not worth it. But that was the most professional and the most sensible response that was underneath this entire post from anybody that commented. So the fact that they were able to have that, back and forth there, that small little back and forth was fantastic to see, because you don't see it very often, especially in a sport of gladiators on the field, right? Like, that's the whole point. I didn't think it looked egregious. I've seen it a few times. It didn't look. It was pretty gnarly, I will say that, but I wouldn't call it egregious by any means. I think I side with the CFL on that one. Definitely should have been fined, though, just because it is such a dangerous hit. But I mean, it sucks for Drew Brown. Like in long term, from a long term perspective with Drew Brown, in Ottawa, you have to start wondering what their play is at the quarterback position, because this team is definitely underperforming. Let's be honest. It's not performing to where you and I both thought. I'm sure it's not performing where they thought. I'm sure it's not performing where the CFL fans thought. In general, like this team seems to have a pretty good, understanding of, what they have for talent and what they have in the league, and I don't know. It feels interesting there, and I can't put all the blame on Drew Brown, because it may not necessarily all be his fault, but something went awry in this offseason for Ottawa, and nothing is clicking or working for them.
Yeah, it's been weird. It's been a weird stretch as far as an Ottawa fan. I have touted Drew Brown heavily since he came into Ottawa. I'm a Red Blacks fan, so I mean, I've watched over the past couple seasons as we've trotted out, Jeremiah Masoli for 2 games a season for 3 different years or 2 different seasons. When we saw guys like Tyree Adams start games and Dustin Crum. And, I jumped on the Dustin Crum hype train when he was doing some good things. But the truth of the matter is we have not had a passing attack at all for basically the last 5 seasons, roughly since 2018 when Trevor Harris was here. So it's a situation where I don't think we're in a position where we can move on from Drew Brown just based off the recent history of quarterbacks with Ottawa. And you definitely don't have a guy in that room currently that you feel comfortable enough to move on right now. But, I mean, you have to wonder. The guy's 0-4 as a starter this season. He's been banged up multiple times. He's playing well, but he's not playing out of this world when it comes to preventing turnovers and, converting drives into points. He's got 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He's thrown for over almost 1,100 yards in 4 games. So, I mean, he's definitely moving the ball, and that's a lot more than a lot of quarterbacks have been able to say in Ottawa over the past couple seasons. So, I think you're, just based on where you're at geographically and historically with Ottawa, I think you have to continue to roll with Drew Brown currently. But man, if you do not go into this offseason with quarterback 2 as a very high priority I have to question the direction of this organization because Matthew Schultz is not it. Dustin Crum is not it. Crum's a great quarterback 3, does a lot of good things in the run game. I just don't think he cuts it as a passer, and he's in season 3, I believe, at this point, after spending his first season on the practice squad. So I think he should be at a point where he's developed enough as a CFL player that he should be able to step in and start. But I just think he leaves too much on the table in terms of his passing ability. So as far as that goes, if I'm Ottawa, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe you go try and get a guy like Trey Ford and bring him in as the quarterback too, and that way you've got somebody who's at least an elite athlete that can step in when Brown is hurt, or maybe you try and go get a veteran like McLeod Bethel Thompson if he still wants to play after the season, or he's out in Montreal, or just please God, don't bring back Nick Arbuckle. That's all.
Hey, Arbuckle looked pretty good last night.
Yeah, in the first one of the season. It's just one of those situations, man. It's really weird in Ottawa as far as how this is all worked out. Because, like I said, Brown's playing great. He's moving the ball 300 plus yards a game almost every week, it seems like. So it's just there's something missing there, and I definitely think we need to work on the defense as well. So
I think your O-line's a problem, and you haven't been able to generate a pass rush.
That's very accurate on both fronts, for sure.
Yeah, I feel like both those situations are underperforming compared to where I thought they would be. Especially the pass rush side of things. I feel like you guys are just not getting pressure on offenses at all.
That is fair. That is fair for sure. I mean, there definitely has been a lack of pressure, and that's a whole nother topic. Because I mean, you've got some of the best pass rushers in the league at times. Bryce Carter and Lorenzo Maldin. I mean, maybe we need to address the interior of the defensive line around Blessman Toala. It's just something needs to change if Ottawa is going to be a consistent contender, and perhaps, I hate to say it, but it might be the coaching staff at this point. So.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. You never know. It just something's not clicking there for you guys for sure. So
agreed. And this is year 2 of Bob Dice, or year 3 of Bob Dice, and year 2 of Tommy Condell, and it's probably about time to start asking some tough questions for sure. Moving on though, MBT had some interesting quotes after this past weekend, and I figure I'll let you take the reins on this one because you were actually the one who pointed it out. After this past game where he played pretty well and got the win for Montreal, what were your thoughts on his comments? And I can pull them up here shortly.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, he just basically blasted TSN and said, "Don't say good things about me," because TSN's been kind of tearing him apart a little bit, or has been negative in a lot of their comments towards him or overall about things. And TSN, man, like it brings up an interesting, conversation that you and I have had a couple times here. TSN's also responsible for employing Luke Wilson, who we talked about him a few episodes ago, and he still apparently has his tendencies to throw up on there on social media and kind of attack the league, and maybe this is TSN's way of creating viewership. Maybe it's just what they do is they hone in on somebody and make a comment and or drag somebody or drag a league in this case or whatever it may be. I do have to say that I think the CFL, as a whole, like, it needs to be a little less sensitive, because there is going to be critiques to the league. Like, there's going to be critics to the league. It's going to happen. I mean, there's critics to the NFL every day. There's critics to the UFL. You credit critics across the board. I will say that you don't need to overreact to everything. But Luke Wilson feels like, from a Luke Wilson perspective, and we'll get back to MBT in a minute, but because Luke Wilson's tied in with TSN, it feels like almost like TSN's paying him to be a little controversial when it comes to the league, right? That's almost what it feels like, because for every really good post that he has, there's 2 or 3 that are kind of like dredging the league, right? Like, it's almost like, but he's not doing it in a manner where it's offensive, right? He's just being like honest thoughts and critiquing and criticizing and stuff like that. My only issues with him is him applying it to the whole league when he's talking about one particular game. MBT seems to have like a more of a personal thing here, though. Didn't it feel that way to you? Like with his comments and what he said, it feels like they've been a little more personal with their, I guess I don't want to say attacks, critiques, I guess, of him and his play and whatnot across that board. I don't know how you felt about that, but to me, it felt like it was a little more on a personal level to him, the way that he said it. So yeah, man, I mean, maybe TSN's getting what they want. I know that the broadcast deal is with the CFL through TSN up there in Canada, so maybe it's just like a way to bring in viewerships and get the numbers up. But very interesting that TSN suddenly being like public enemy number one for the CFL this year.
That's a good point. And honestly, I think that you and I have talked about this off camera quite a bit, and I think we even talked about it the first time we brought up Luke Wilson's comments. But I think he is definitely intentionally creating controversy.
Yeah.
I don't think that he's saying anything that's necessarily untrue entirely,
Right.
and it's all opinion based. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we can't judge the man on his opinion. He's allowed to feel however he wants. But at the same point, I definitely see that it has generated a ton of discourse on Twitter. And that is obviously, where we live in a world where content drives everything at this point. Obviously, we're coming to you talking about the CFL right now, and 50 some people are watching us talk about it. So we're at a situation where content drives everything, and these leagues are beginning to realize that, and as well as these news agencies. So if they can bring somebody in who's got some controversial opinions, who can create a buzz, who can create engagement, which is honestly the most important part of creating content at this point, is engagement. Speaking of which, if you guys want to drop some comments in the chat, that'd be great.
Yeah, for sure.
I think he's doing his job, right? He's putting the CFL on the map more so than it has been in the past, and I think he might be the perfect person to do it, because he's doing it in a manner where he's upsetting the typical CFL fan, but at the same time saying things that the American fan might think or feel. So maybe he's drawing in some American fans in the process. But at the same time, I mean, you could say whatever you want about Luke Wilson and his comments, but he has definitely created a buzz. And then on MBT, I do think this is a little bit more personal situation for him. I feel, he's one of those quarterbacks that we talk about that he's nearing the back nine of his career, right? He's, in his mid 30s. He's had a lot of success over the last couple of years, but it seems like the past couple of seasons he's kind of transitioned into this phase of his career where teams aren't really looking at him as a starter anymore. They're looking at him as that veteran backup that they can bring in and potentially, sit behind a younger quarterback. He was with Edmonton before. Now he's in Montreal behind Davis Alexander. So I feel like the comments are kind of hitting him hard, because he's at that point where he's kind of having to accept that his age is really kind of holding back his role with teams. That, nobody's going to bring him in as their long-term answer at the quarterback position, when he's in his late 30s, as he says. So I think he definitely took a lot more offense to their criticism, because he understands where he's at in his career and he's trying to fight that narrative. So he was quite literally, able to fight that narrative by throwing out comments at TSN. But I wanted to play his comments. It's a minute long clip, so bear with us. And that clip can be found at tsn.ca. And there's a lot more about it, but I'm going to go ahead and pull it up. Again, all credit to tsn.ca if you want to hear this. But here is the full comments.
You guys have now won 2 in a row. Very efficient game for you. You went 30 for 40, had a touchdown, almost close to 300 yards. Talk to me a little bit about your performance tonight.
There's so many things I can do better. Right there at the end, I could read to the boundary there, missed the comeback there. So early in the game, pick, can't do it. So you got to stay true to colors, TSN panel. Don't say anything good about me. There's plenty of stuff. There's a slant right there. There's a pick. About 4 or 5 plays. So stay true. Don't say anything good about me, all right? Even you, Enoch, my brother, I love you, fam.
You also had a huge kick from your kicker mouth.
All right, that's basically the gist of it. But it's interesting to hear his comments and kind of unpack them there. Because, I mean, like I said, I feel like this probably does not come out from MBT being the type of person that he is if it weren't for the fact that he's at this stage in his career.
I mean, he did a good job of playing it off like in a playful manner, but you could definitely tell there was something there. Stay true to colors. That line sticks to me. Stay true, like that. That sticks to me more than anything because he did it. He played it off in a playful manner, and maybe it doesn't hurt him as deeply as, or it's very possible that it hurts him more deeply than he's playing it off as is. But I think it's just more or less the fact that when you are the premier CFL coverage and you are actively doing what you can on your end to be public enemy number one, I always find it hilarious, in my opinion. I mean, kudos to TSN for finding and generating, content on it and getting engagements across the board. But you're definitely going to piss some people off along the way.
Absolutely. Honestly, it's been kind of fun to follow, just because of the fact that like they're doing a really good job of generating engagement and some fan interaction because of all this. So, I mean, good on them for being able to do that and taking the CFL and hopefully continuing to grow it. So, I mean, I don't know if this is all by design from both parties or if this is just a TSN thing that they've kind of leaned into, but regardless, it seems to be working. So, keep it up. I mean, obviously, some of these things that have been said by Luke Wilson and then MBT, it's not bad, like by the sense that it makes the league look bad, but there's, a little bit of added storylines to some things. So, I mean, I feel like it's a good thing overall for the league. But looking at the injury situation, there's some fairly substantial injuries on this list. And I'm not sure if you got it pulled up, but we can trade time here. I don't want to, monopolize all these by any stretch, but Winnipeg's got quite a bit of stuff going on. Peyton Logan, Mike Benson just made are nearing a return. Eric Lofton also returned last week. Zach Claros exited the game. Toronto's gotten hit kind of hard. Chad Kelly was placed on the 6-game injury list. As we all know, we mentioned that earlier. And then Ryan Hunter, one of their offensive linemen, is out 6 to 8 weeks, and that's probably why we see the move to have Shane Richards return. Did you want to take the reins on Ottawa and Montreal? I mean, mainly it's just Drew Brown and Davis Alexander.
I mean, essentially, I don't think we need to touch base on all of these. I feel like that when you definitely look at these lists, I mean, Ottawa specifically, their list is like has been pretty much hundreds of people all friggin' day, all the time, anyways, as it is. But yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like overall, Ottawa's is hopefully getting better. Hopefully, Drew Brown's isn't super long. But I mean, anytime there's injuries involved with this, I don't have the list in front of me. I don't know where you get it on the website, the CFL website. I'm on the doc. I don't see it, but I just see Drew Brown basically and Davis Alexander for those two. But
yeah, my bad. I've just been adding the. I hate to say it this way, but the main players of the team when kind of just the storyline type stuff. So
I mean, that's really all you can do, though. I mean, those are the ones that are. I mean, every injury is impactful in some manner, whether it's depth or a supporting player or role player. But I feel like Ottawa has been part of the issue with Ottawa has been the amount of injuries they've had, because I feel like their friggin' IL list or whatever they call it up there has been literally 10 plus people all year long. Every week it feels like that there's on there. So it really does, and obviously the major ones, across the board, Ryan Hunter, like you mentioned him, and the reason why probably Shane Richards is back is because Hunter's out for Toronto, and Davis Alexander obviously being hurt for Montreal is crucial, and it's hard, man. Like, it's hard, and Ottawa may have just been Ottawa's entire issues may have just been the injury bug all year long for them. So hopefully they can bounce back and try to salvage some of the season for sure.
Agreed. And honestly, that could be a big reason why we keep seeing Drew Brown getting injured. Their offensive line has been banged up all season long. I think, honestly, the big one out of the last couple there is Davis Alexander being placed on the 6-game injured list. With him going on that injured list, obviously MBT is the guy for at least the next 5 weeks after this past game. So that's going to be, substantial for Montreal. If he can keep him in the hunt, keep him winning games like he did this past week, then, they're probably fine, and they probably roll right into the playoffs like we expect. But MBT is kind of known for some games here and there where he'll turn the ball over for you. So that could be something to watch with Montreal going forward. But honestly, we could have done entire episodes on all of Ottawa's injuries this season. It was insane to look back. Week 1, right before week 1's game, they had legitimately, I think they had 12 to 13 players on the injured list, and guys that were missing time and missing games on that injured list. So it's been rough for them all season long. I think they've probably been hit the hardest, barring maybe Toronto. Toronto's had a lot of injury issues this season as well. So, and to key players as well. So I think that's probably why we see Ottawa and Toronto where they're at right now. But overall, I think injuries have been a big issue this season in general. And I don't think there's anything the league can really do to change that. It's a violent sport, unfortunately. So
yeah, that's the way that it is. And like you said, maybe that's part of the reason why Drew Brown keeps getting banged up, is because the offensive line is dealing with some injuries up there in front in Ottawa. And, I mentioned already that their offensive line seems to be underperforming. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, they've been missing Samuel Carson all season long, rookie starter center who was expected to start. So we've had a backup center or a depth piece there at center for most of the season. Zach Pelios, I think he plays right tackle. He's missed quite a few games, just recently came back. There's been like a constant struggle to keep starting offensive linemen for Ottawa. But we're going to transition into the last segment of the show and give you our picks for the next 5 games, since we have a game tonight. And then we do not have any Sunday games next week. So we'll give you all 4 next week as well. But before we get into that, I'm going to play a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
This is Current. It's the card my parents used to pay me for mowing the lawn, running errands, and doing well in school.
Oh, wow.
This is the card I used when we got the idea to make our own clothes. And we spread the word, drove downtown, and sold everything we made. This is the card I use to do the things that really matter. This is Current. Visit current.com and download the app for free today.
All right, so here we have the next 5 games. As I mentioned before, we have a game tonight. Fairly early one, which I actually enjoy. It is cool watching CFL football till 11 o'clock Mountain Time, but it would be awesome to have an early game tonight. So Hamilton at BC kicks off at 3 p.m. Eastern, 5 o'clock Mountain Time. Who do you have in that one?
I took BC, but I'm not confident. I'll be honest with you. I feel like Hamilton could surprise people, and with the way that this league, the way that this weekend went, between Winnipeg losing to Toronto and Calgary losing to a Davis Alexander-less Montreal team, I wouldn't be surprised if Hamilton won this game. But I'm taking BC. I'm just not confident about it.
Fair. It's a fair point. I'm going to take BC as well because they're at home, but same thing. Like, I'm not super confident. Would not shock me at all if Hamilton pulls this one out. They've been playing fairly fairly well as of late. So we shall see. So both of us picked BC. That might be the way to go as far as that goes. Moving on to next week, week 9 already. It seems like we're flying through the season already. We have a Thursday game, which is, we've had a lot of Thursday games recently, which has been fun. 5:30 p.m. Mountain Time kickoff, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, and they are in Ottawa. I would expect currently, I haven't looked at the injury report for this week because it's a bye week, but I would expect Drew Brown to be back for this game. I could be wrong, but time will tell on that one. But who do you have in this one?
Calgary. Ottawa has, it's more than a Drew Brown situation. I feel like they have a lot of issues going on. And I know Calgary just lost to Montreal, but Montreal's a little bit more of a upper echelon team. No offense to Ottawa. Ottawa has the injury issues that we just talked about. And I think with the way Vernon Adams is playing right now, where he's playing MOP, caliber football, it's going to be very hard for Ottawa to win this game.
Yeah, as much as I want to pick Ottawa, I'm on the Calgary train. They are looking like one of the best teams in the league currently, and I refuse to pick against them until they prove to me that they're gonna, fall off of that pace. Because, man, if anything, I think they've been better than I thought they were going to be this season. So, very excited about what's kind of taking place there in Calgary. And I think they're going to roll through some teams the rest of the stretch. Want to give a quick breakdown on the next one?
Toronto and Winnipeg. Obviously, we know that Toronto has pretty much owned Winnipeg the last few times that they have played. This is in Winnipeg. I can't imagine that Winnipeg is going to lose 2 straight to Toronto, but it's hard to pick against Toronto because they've owned Winnipeg. I'm going to take Winnipeg, and I'm not going to be confident about it, though.
Okay.
I think they get their revenge. But I'm not confident. I'm probably less confident about that than I am BC tonight. So. I just don't trust Arbuckle. I know he played great last night, but I just don't trust Arbuckle. So.
That's fair, and ironically, my pick I think is really kind of contingent on who starts for quarterback. Starts at quarterback for Winnipeg. If it's Collaros, I actually feel more inclined to pick Toronto on the road. If it's Streveler, I feel like just matchup wise, I'm probably more inclined to pick Winnipeg at that point. So, I think I'm just going to lean Winnipeg currently. Because of that fact, I think Streveler might end up starting this game. But man, that's a tough one. That's going to be a good game, I think.
I will say if Toronto wins this, they're going to make the playoffs and create a lot of havoc.
Yeah, I would
I think week 9 is going to be a key point for them. I think they still have a chance even if they lose. But I feel like if they win, they go to 3-6 or 3-7 or 3-5. And I think they'll put themselves in a really good situation and spot to be able to make the playoffs, and I think they'll wreak havoc, especially if Chad Kelly comes back. So,
agreed. And honestly, I think that's probably exactly what they're hoping for. String together enough wins and enough momentum at the right time that they can get in the playoffs, and then Chad Kelly can hopefully lead them back to the promised land. Or Arbuckle can have a late season, miracle, which
play like the MOP of the MVP of the Grey Cup, like he did.
Exactly. If you just want to take the reins on the last two, that works.
Yeah, Hamilton and Edmonton. I mean, obviously, these two teams have not really been strong powerhouses. Bo Levi Mitchell's played pretty well for Hamilton. I know that we both picked BC tonight, but Hamilton's kind of a tricky one. They can go out and beat you, or they're going to put up a clunker. Edmonton at home, I don't know. This Edmonton team's kind of a disarray. I'm taking Hamilton in this one, and I honestly don't think it will be close. It may be close for like the first quarter, but I don't think it's going to be close.
Interesting. I actually am going to pick Edmonton in this one. I don't have a ton of faith in the pick, but I give them a slight edge because they're at home. I like what Fajardo was able to do this past week. I think he's actually catching a lot of heat for that loss by Edmonton, and I don't think it was really his fault, to be honest. And I think he's a steadying veteran presence for their team. So I think that once he gets a couple more weeks under his belt, he might kind of turn the tide for Edmonton and further shut the door on Trey Ford's career in Edmonton. So I'm picking Edmonton on this one.
And then the closeout, it's Saskatchewan and Montreal, which very possibly could be a Grey Cup preview. I believe. No, they're not in the same. They're in the same division. Never mind. No, they're not. Are they?
Let me check because I honestly am drawing a blank at the moment.
For some reason, I want to say they aren't. I think Saskatchewan's west, right?
Saskatchewan is in the west, and Montreal's on the east. You're right.
Yeah. So this could be a Grey Cup preview. I knew when I said it, it sounded right, but then I started second guessing myself. And very honestly, to be honest with you, I would not be shocked if it was these two teams. Montreal not having Davis Alexander, though, is going to be key here because Saskatchewan's healthier than Montreal. I think Saskatchewan's going to win this game, but I would not put it past Montreal making this game closer than it needs to be, just like they did against Calgary. Because even though MBT is older and
I think I'm going to pick Montreal on this one as well. Sorry, not Montreal. What am I doing?
Yeah, I'm picking Saskatchewan. So.
Yep.
Saskatchewan. I'll pick Saskatchewan in this one. But that about wraps this episode up. I definitely have to get running, so we're going to go ahead and call this one good. I apologize on the quick ending here, but
nope, you're good.
I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Give us your predictions in the chat. Any final thoughts by you, Michael?
No, I'm good.
Any final thoughts from you?
Did you lose me?
Yeah, sorry about that. I was muted for a second.
You got me now?
Yeah.
Oh, weird. I was wondering why. I was actually talking when you came in. I must have lost you on the verbal. No, I'm good. There's nothing on my
Awesome.
So
awesome. Well, in that case, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. Hit that like button if you haven't already. And once again, I apologize for the abrupt ending. Had something pop up that I need to go attend to.
Nope, that's fine.